now? Right, so hopefully that gives us some illustration in terms of the link between positioning and the marketing mix variables, right? Positioning is kind of abstract, if you like, for the consumers. Yes, I understand what you promised to me, right? When I look at the position statement, when I look at your communication, that's the promise that you want to convey to me. But the real delivery is the product, price, place, and promotion. Okay, right. Now let's look at products, product decision. Okay. Well, what is product? Well, trust me, we buy product or service every day. When we wake up early in the morning and we turn the electricity on, we actually expect bill will come, and unfortunately they're always on time. All right, so that means we buy something. Okay, so what is product? Well, in the olden days, product was defined as anything that we make, right? Anything that we make in the plant. Okay, now that takes the manufacturer perspective actually, right? And we recommend people to take it from the customer perspective. From the customer perspective, what in the if you recall our discussion about value creation or exchange process, we actually start with their need. Okay, therefore, from the customer perspective, product is actually defined as anything that that can be offered for the customer's attention, acquisition, or consumption that might meet their need or want. Okay, so that's what we mean by a product. Okay, in other words, I'd like to highlight in here to start from the customer's need. All right, when it comes to designing a product. Okay, so that's a product. Now, we also say that the product might meet the customer's wants. Okay, and we also discussed in the previous module that want is actually a particular form a need might take, and therefore it has the effect of the customer's personality and cultural background of the customers. Okay, now if you look at that, well. Kit Kat soy sauce, Kit Kat wasabi. Well, do you have it in your home country, Hans?
No, never seen those ones.
Never. Okay. What about if they are available in the local store? Would you buy it?
It's an interesting combination, so I'd say probably not.
Right. Okay. Well, for some people, there are indeed interesting combinations. Well, for Western markets, for instance, it doesn't make sense. Soy sauce is kind of savory flavor. Kit Kat is, chocolate, savory and sweet. Yeah, kind of. Okay, for some people, we may say that it's kind of, interesting combination. But anyway, again, this is an example of that shows that the product is actually, we need to consider the cultural influence and also the personality of the customers. Okay. Right, now I'm not going to play this video, but on the slide you can click that just for your interests in terms of understanding customer needs. The next one is about product, services, and experiences. And the company, if we refer to the definition of marketing that we discussed some time ago, we say that we use the term market offering. The reason for that is to meet the customer's need. We need more than just physical product. Okay, so if they use the term product, it may be associated to physical goods. Okay, so in other words, meeting the customer's need may require us to offer more than just tangible goods. Right, we may also need to consider the services component, or thinking about the experience that we are going to build for the customers, create for the customers. Okay, and marketers find that adding service or creating the experience, the customer's experience, or CX, basically help them creating differentiation for the customers. Okay. Right, now this is the concept that I'd like you to include in your marketing plan for your assessment too when it comes to product analysis. There are 3 levels of product. This is the This is basically helping the product planners to design their product. Okay, so core customer value. There are three decisions that the product planners must decide. The first one is core customer value, or in other words, it is the some scholars also label it as core product. Okay, that reflects what the customer is really buying, or the reason they buy. Okay, the reason they buy, or the core, that which is basically about the core benefits they buy the product. Okay, so when it comes to drill, for instance, why the customers buy the drill? What is it that the customers are really buying? Well, buying a drill is basically a tool for us to make a hole, right? So that is the core customer value, to make a hole, simple. So that's the core customer value of a drill, okay? Now, the actual product includes these 5 areas, right? So these give, therefore, the concept of 3 levels of product actually allows us to detail it, okay? To detail a product strategy, okay? The actual product in here includes brand name, features, the design, the packaging, and quality level. At what quality level that we want the product to be, okay? And it has to reflect the core customer value. Whatever we promise, the core customer value reflects the promise, right? Reflects the expectation of the customers. So the actual product that we design in here should reflect that, okay? And the next level is what we call as the augmented product, which is basically about the which is basically about the extra benefit or extra service that we promise for the customers. Okay, so that reflects the additional customer services and benefits. Okay, in other words, the augmented product includes the warranty, post-sale service, for instance, the product support information. That's the type of things that we provide. A lot of companies offer 1800 number, for instance, or 1300 number to help the customers, calling them when they need help. All right. Again, the 3 of them are basically used by the product planners to help guiding them, guiding the product planners. All right. Now, the other thing I'd like to highlight in terms of 3 levels of product is basically the level of actual product and augmented product can be adjusted, right? As long as it meets the core customer value. If I design a premium product, I have to offer a lot of features, right? Fantastic features, nice design, nice packaging, and top level of quality, strong brand reputation that I use, brand name that has strong brand reputation in the market, for instance. That's the thing that I need to consider when it comes to actual product, okay? But if I design, hang on a second, and in terms of augmented product, I will also provide the customers with a lot of support, a lot of customer support, for instance. Okay, I may provide them with online chat or training and so on and so forth. So I deliver the strong product support. Okay, and warranty is another thing I would consider as well in terms of augmented product. But if I design a budget brand, right, product that needs to be affordable, then I still have to deliver the core customer value, whatever the product is. But I may reduce some of the features, okay? And my design will also be affected, okay? And the packaging that I use will also be affected, as well as the quality level. Yep, as long as it meets, being decent for the customers, not necessary to be fantastic, that is still fine. And in terms of brand name, I will also use, brand that is quite popular in terms of being budget, for instance. Augmented product, I will do a lot of adjustment. I may, in fact, offer very, very little of augmented product. All right. So, for instance, budget airline may not offer, information support. So, if they cancel the flight, the customers are already at the airport. Well, too bad. Please go back home and come back later. All right. If you complain why we don't tell you, well, too bad. We are budget airline. We don't promise that to you. What we promise to you is to fly you from A to B. That's it. We fulfill that. Okay, so that's basically hopefully that gives us a bit of illustration in terms of 3 levels of product. Okay, now we have Qantas, or let's say Emirates, as an airline that we can also consider, right? We can compare that with Ryanair, for instance. By the way, have you heard this airline before, Hans? Ryanair?
Yes, yep, heard of Ryanair, yep.
Yeah. Quite, you know. Have you flown Ryanair before?
I haven't flown Ryanair. We flew a different one, but similar, real budget one.
Yeah, real budget one. So indeed, they are budget airline, and people say that they are very, very cheap. Flying from Ireland, Dublin to their parts of Europe, you may only spend 20-30 euros basically, which is quite cheap. So, but they still deliver the core customer value. Okay, what is that? They fly people from A to B, like Emirates. They fly people from A to B, right, in a luxurious way. In the case of Emirates, okay. In the case of Ryanair, flying people from A to B affordably. Okay, the actual product would be different. The brand name, the packaging, the features, right? The leg room may be, a bit squashy in the case of Ryanair. Number of toilets would be reduced to minimum, right? I mean, you could argue that people may not need to use the toilet flying Ryanair. Okay, but anyway, that's what that's an example in terms of comparing the features. Okay. Right, so hopefully that gives you an illustration. Please include this concept in our marketing plan for assessment 2. 3 levels of product. Okay, and the next one is just briefly about products and service classification. Broadly speaking, we have consumer products, industrial products, and the other one is organizations, persons, places, events, and IDs, or in other words, we say others for the other categories in here. Okay, because they're quite broad range. In here. Right, if we zoom into consumer products, we have several types of consumer product: convenience, shopping, specialty, and unsold. Okay, the convenience product, and if you look at several criteria in here, from customer buying perspective, price, distribution, promotion, we'll be able to tell the difference among the 4 of them. Convenience, from customer buying perspective, is normally is frequently purchased. Okay, so the customers use it a lot, right? Probably every day they use it. Okay, since the customers' purchase is quite frequent, okay, the volume of this product category would normally be high. Therefore, the price would be quite low, right? Economic. This is basically from economic principle as well. Okay. And the distribution needs to be widespread. Okay, they need to be quite widespread distribution, so intensive distribution. Okay, promotion would be mass promotion because they deal with a lot of customers, right? Compared to business market, the number of customers would be very little. But these guys are basically widespread. Okay, and examples include anything in the grocery store, such as soft drink, for instance. In the case of soft drink, they are in fact in non-traditional types of kiosks, like vending machine, for instance. Aside from going to modern stores such as Woolworths and Coles or any other grocery stores, they are also in vending machine. Okay, and shopping is another one, less frequent purchased. Okay, we do not purchase this kind of product category quite frequent. The price is higher, and therefore they don't need to be distributed intensively. And their promotion depends on advertising and personal selling. Okay, and examples include major appliances, fashion apparel, TV, mobile device. All right, we don't buy these kind of product categories, very frequently, like breakfast cereal or toothpaste, for instance. Okay, and specialty, basically luxury items. So normally customers have strong brand association or brand preference, and the price is very expensive. Their distribution is exclusive, and in terms of promotion, it's more carefully targeted promotion because they want to aim at the top level of customers from income perspective. And the last one is unsold product category, which is basically little awareness. And if the customers are aware, they may, if they have the option of not buying it, they will not buy it. Okay. Examples include insurance. Okay, we're basically buying a piece of paper, kind of, not expecting the incident to happen, but we do need to think about the backup plan if that thing happens. Right. Therefore, these guys are basically quite aggressive in terms of advertising and promotional support. All right, so that's side of consumer product. Right, now the next thing is about product and service decisions. I'm not going to discuss this a lot. I just briefly, they include these guys: product attributes, branding decision, packaging. Okay, just on packaging, highlights on the packaging includes the there are two functions that that we can expect from packaging. The first one is to protect the product. And the second one is to communicate the value for the customers. And the next one is labeling, which is basically about, there are at least, again, two roles of labeling. The first one is to communicate the customers, communicate the how to use the product, for instance, the ingredient, and so on and so forth, so the customers get the information that they need. And the second function is basically of labeling is basically to meet the compliance standard or to meet the regulatory standards. And each country in most of product categories have that. Okay, so for instance, nutritional facts, the way we write the nutritional fact in food category is normally regulated and it may be different from one country to the other country. Okay, right. And okay, the next one that I'd like to discuss briefly is the services marketing. Service is different to a physical product. Service is actually defined as an activity, benefit, or satisfaction that we offer for the customers that might meet their need. Now, the key point about service is it does not translate the ownership. The transaction, the purchase of service does not translate in the transition of ownership. Okay, so if you buy a packet of biscuit, okay, we will be the owner of that packet of biscuit. But if you buy a service, let's say we check into a hotel, Four Seasons Hotel, all right, an example of service business, it doesn't mean that we'll be the owner of that hotel. We will be allowed to stay in that hotel during specific time and specific duration. Okay, so that's a service. Okay, it doesn't translate to the change of ownership. There are four characteristics of service, and they are quite important because they bring impact to marketing practice. The first one is intangibility. Services cannot be seen, tasted, felt, heard, or smelled before purchase. So we, as a customer, it's hard for us to understand. Let's say we book Four Seasons Hotel or whatever hotel that is. It's hard for us to have that feeling until we are there, until we arrive at the hotel. Right? We feel the ambience of the hotel, and we go into our room. Then we have a better feeling. Okay, this is the type of room that I'm actually buying. Okay, in quote unquote. Okay, now that has strong implication. From a marketing perspective, since it is intangible, it is hard for customers to communicate it. Right? Therefore, services marketers would normally have a lot of marketing collateral materials like brochures, leaflet, fantastic product shot, fantastic shots. Or for their websites, for instance, right? That helps the customers to build the information that they need, so that they can tell and retell the story about the service that they buy. Okay. The second one is inseparability. Services cannot be separated from their providers. Now, if you look at this provider in here, right? The providers may be people or machine, or both of them. Okay. Now, if you go to the bank, we may do transaction using the ATM, right? Automatic teller machine, right? So that means a machine delivers the service for us, right? And at some point of time, we may go to the teller. Then we talk about it. Then the teller people in this instance help us to deliver the service. Okay. Now it can't be separated. Now it has implication to marketing practice, right? When customers judge the service quality, they also look at who delivers that. Okay, you imagine that if you go to vending machine, right, a kind of store, and you put in your coins and your drink doesn't come out, well, we may be frustrated. And we may, bang the, we might smash the vending machine, and yeah, that's that is part of our evaluation on the entire brand or product or company. The next one is reliability. Services, the quality of service is varied. Although we have strong member that normally delivers the strong quality of service, okay, but it depends on who they are. It depends on when, where, and how. Okay, so at some point of time, our team may have some disruptions. For instance, if we run a cafe business and we have a team member who is not strong in terms of deliveries of customer service, let's say Robert. Okay, but at some point of time, Robert may have a internal problem. Well, his marriage is probably at risk, for instance. Okay, and it may affect his performance at work. Okay, therefore, as a result, strong companies, as an implication, strong companies would normally set the standards, and they communicate the standard to both the employees and also the customers. Okay. For instance, in Australia, to manage the customer's expectation, Australia Post announced to the customers that they would deliver mails in 24 hours if they receive the mails before 12 noon time. Okay, but now they mention 48 hours because the increase of cost. And the next one is perishability. Services cannot be stored for later sale or use or consumption. Okay, so that also has implication. Okay, since you can't keep it for future sale. Okay, so you need to think about especially if your business has seasonality. Okay, you need to think about that. Let's say Qantas airline, for argument's sake, let's say QF42 flying from Sydney to, for argument's sake, to Melbourne. Okay, and they have Boeing 737. I'm just making that that can say 120 passengers, for instance. But in one flight, they can only take 80 passengers. What does it mean? 40 seats would be perished. Okay, from inventory management perspective, it should be written off. Okay, so that has implication. Okay, now in other words, businesses, services business that have seasonality would run promotional activities during low seasons, for instance. Okay, and during high season they escalate the price. Okay. All right, so that's services marketing basically, and the key characteristic of services marketing. I bring this topic because I understand that some of us may work on service industry. So just to give an idea in terms of service. All right, now let's briefly discuss about brand. This is what I mean by brand, right? Term, sign, symbol, or design, or combination of those things that differentiate one product to the other products. Okay, but the main point about the brand is actually brand equity. Okay, this is what we mean by brand equity. Okay, the differential effect that knowing the brand name has on customer response to the product and its marketing. Okay, well, it may be too complicated. All right. So what is that in simple term? It is the value that a brand name adds to a product that affects the customer's decision making. Okay. So let's say if I change my career pathway, okay, from education industry to selling bottled water, right? This is my bottled water, okay, and I call it. Oops. Oh. And yeah, I'm not good at drawing actually. And I call it Eddie Water. Okay, EW, right, which is basically similar to my initial. Okay, well, I will compete in the Australian market. I will compete with the I will compete with Mount Franklin. Okay, and if my product sits next to Mount Franklin, okay, and Mount Franklin is about $3, and also offer $3. Which one that you would buy, Hans?
Probably the established one.
Okay, we are friends, right? So this
no offense to your water, but
yeah, right. So hopefully that gives us an idea in terms of the power of the brand. Okay. Now, some experts suggest that the concept brand equity has 4 dimensions. Okay, the first dimension is brand awareness. Right, that's what you say when you mention the established brand, okay, Mount Franklin. Okay, the second dimension is brand association or brand image. Okay, the third dimension is perceived quality, and last one is brand loyalty. Okay, so brand awareness is actually about the degree of knowledge that the customers has, including knowing the brand name. Okay, and brand association is actually about specific word. Okay, specific word that the customers use to associate our brand with. Okay, so when you see a brand like BMW or VW or Mercedes or Toyota, for instance, you will have specific word, 1 or 2 words that you can use to describe those brands, right? So that's what we mean by brand association. Okay, perceived quality is actually how the customers perceive the quality level of the product, right? And the next one is brand loyalty, right? If they are not, which is basically related to the customer satisfaction. Okay, if they're satisfied, they will potentially become our loyalists. Okay, so what are the behaviors of brand loyalty? How do we measure it? Well, we can ask whether they will buy our product again or not. Okay, or we can ask whether they will recommend our product or not, or product or service or not. And there's a couple of things that we can also ask. And you may have the experience that if you call your bank, for instance, at the end of the conversation, the customer service in there on the other line may ask you to stay for a minute to fill out the survey. That is, and one of the questions is actually, are you going to recommend us to your friends or relatives, right? So that is actually something that they use to measure how strong you are in terms of loyalty and also satisfaction with them. Okay. All right. So that's basically a bit about brand, and I'm not going to discuss this one here, the building strong brands, and I'm going to skip that. Well, the other thing I'd like to highlight is the new product development concept, and I just go directly to this process briefly. Now, the process normally starts from the idea generation, which is basically the stage where we list down any ideas. Okay, and again, as we discussed before, not all ideas are relevant or good ideas, so we need to screen them. And the winning ideas will normally go to the concept development and testing. That's when we get our team to develop that in more detail. And after it passed the tests from consumer perspective, we create the strategy. And in this instance, we put in preliminary value, initial volume, initial costing. Right. Once it passes this stage, it will go to more detail in terms of business analysis. This is when we get a better idea in terms of volume and also costing, target market, and detail of the marketing strategy. and then we develop the product and launch it. Okay. Now, in terms of launching, some companies do test marketing, but fast-moving consumer goods or grocery products may find it rare to run the. Recently they seldom do the test marketing, because normally they do new varieties basically. Okay, so consumer electronics may still do it. They launch it, all right. And in some instances, when they launch it, because it's hard for them to get 100% perfect product without mistake. Okay, it's hard. So that's they bring to the market. They get feedback from customers. Hey, what's happening to my device? We call the customers call the company, and the customer service team may say, okay, I'm going to email you the link for you to click, and you can download the new firmware, for instance. That means it is part of the test marketing as well, aside from keep upgrading or improving the product as another reason. Okay, so once it is successful, it will be commercial. National launch. That's what we call commercialization or national rollout. Okay, so that's briefly the new product development process in a nutshell. Now, product life cycle. Briefly about product life cycle. If you Google this concept, you'll find some authors just 4 stages, and some other authors just 5 stages, because they include the product development as another stage. Okay, product life cycles actually reflects sales and profit situation according to the stage of the life cycle of the product. Okay, at developments, the important thing from marketing perspective is different stage has different characteristic or situation that drives different marketing objectives, and eventually it drives different marketing strategies. Okay, so product development stage, for instance, sales, we haven't sold anything, right? If you look at the red line, it is sales line, and if you look at the blue line here, it is the profit line. We are actually losing money. Okay, because we spend the money to help us developing the product. Okay, we spend the money to develop the product, packaging designer, and so on and so forth, right? So the objective in here is actually to design a product that meets the customer's needs, right? How do you get there? Well, we work with the stakeholders. We do research and work with the stakeholders, right? And at introduction stage, we actually introduce the product for the first time. Okay, we introduce the product for the first time, and at that time, sales is still low. Why is that? Because that's the situation that we face. Sales is still low. Okay, why is that? Because customers are not aware of that product yet. Okay, therefore they haven't tried that product yet. Little number of customers tried that product. Okay, as a result, from marketing objective perspective, we need to stimulate trial and brand awareness. Okay, so from a campaign, from a strategy perspective, we need to run the campaign to stimulate trial through advertising campaign and also sampling activity, for instance. All right. Now, the product that survives the introduction stage will go to the growth stage, which is basically sales is increasing rapidly from situation perspective. Okay. Cost is reducing, is declining because cost per customer is declining since our volume is increasing. And from objective perspective, if you look at the ideal situation, if the business is growing, okay, if the business is growing, one of the problem that we may have is we attract competitors to come in. Okay, so that affects our objectives. Okay, the objectives would be to maximize our market share. So hopefully we can dominate the market before our competitors come into the industry. Okay, so what do we do? Well, we expand the distribution, we expand the product, we offer different varieties of the product. Okay, in the case of consumer electronic, we may launch the second generation and drop the price of the first generation, like what the guys at Apple do with iPad. When they launch the second generation, they drop the price of the first iPad generation. right, and maintain the price for the second generation. Okay, expand the distribution. So we intensify our distribution coverage, for instance, right? And then the product goes to maturity stage. Right? At this stage, we have competitors who can establish their position as well in the market. Okay, and our sales is quite high, but the growth is flattening. Okay, so in here, why the growth is flattening? Because we share the pie with the competitors. Okay, so the possible objectives in here would be to defend our market shares, right? To defend our market shares and maximize our profits. Okay, so that would be our possible objectives. How do we do that? Well, we focus on our key differentiation. So we expect the competitors to switch to us. Okay, and we try to preempt their strategies basically by expanding our distributions. So keep pushing our distribution so we can block our competitors basically. And the next stage is basically the declining stage, where customers may find another product that meets their need better. Okay, so because of that, the volume of the industry declines. Okay, now the volume of with the declining stage of the industry, normally the first two or three players, the top 2 or 3 players maximum, survive in the industry because they have the economies of scale. The other players need to consider check out of from the product category. In saying that, though, in some industries, the other players, although they are small, but if it is the only business, they may attack the industry aggressively. Okay, because it is the only product that they have. Okay, so what do we need to do? Well, what we need to do is to actually minimize our spending in here, so we can milk this business for profit, and then we can put it back into launching a new product category or launching a new product in that industry for our business. Okay, so in other words, we do cost saving in here. Right? When I say cost saving, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have product development work. We may simplify our packaging. We may simplify our production process, for instance. Okay, and from product management perspective, we offer, we phase out the weak items and we keep the strong items, and we may want to simplify the product. Price perspective, we need to think about beating or matching the competitors, or in fact, if we need to, we may cut the price. Okay. And from distribution perspective, we may need to scale back our distribution coverage, reducing the number of stores, because it's not beneficial for the business if we widen our distribution, since the customers may not need it. And from promotion perspective, we reduce to very, very minimum. And in fact, we may not spend any money to support the business. Okay, right. So that's basically product life cycle in a nutshell. Okay, right. So any questions, comments so far, Hans?
No, all fairly straightforward, I think.
Right. Brilliant. All right. Well, if there's a case, then again. Thank you very much for joining me tonight, and I'll see you in the next session. And hopefully I can finish marking on the weekend.
Okay, sounds good.
Right, bye.
All right, thanks, Eddie. Bye.